Imagine this. Tonight, you park your truck, shut the engine down, climb into the bunk, and 8 hours later, you wake up inside a machine surrounded by minus 30 degrees Celsius air. The glass is frozen over, the doors are ice cold, and between your body and that winter, there is only metal, glass, rubber seals, and whatever heating system is still working. Now think about this. Thousands of truck drivers face that exact situation every winter night across Canada, Russia, Scandinavia, and the northern United States. Not for adventure, not for a challenge. It is simply part of the job. So, how do they actually survive it? And more than that, how do they sleep comfortably in weather that can kill you? That is what we are looking at today. Hi, this is VibeTale. Before we go any further, let us be very clear about what kind of situation we mean here. We are not talking about a driver parked at a warm truck stop, sitting under bright lights, drinking hot coffee, with a heated cabin that feels almost like a hotel room. We are talking about the drivers far away from comfort. The ones pulled over on a frozen highway in northern Canada or crossing Siberia, where the nearest truck stop might be 300 kilometers away, and the air outside is not just cold, it is dangerous. In those conditions, every detail matters. How the cab is built matters. What kind of heater is installed matters. The driver's habits matter. Even the bedding on the bunk can matter. So let us start with the most basic question. What is it actually like to sleep inside a truck in that kind of cold? Picture the scene. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, the engine is off. Outside, the temperature has dropped past minus 30 degrees Celsius, which for viewers in the United States is about minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. That is not a chilly night. That is the kind of night where mistakes become serious very quickly. A truck cab without heat does not stay warm for long. It is not a house. It is not surrounded by thick walls, insulation, and a stable heating system. It is a compact metal cabin with large windows, thin panels, door seals, vents, and dozens of places where cold can creep in. Once the engine is shut down, the temperature inside starts dropping fast. After a couple of hours, the difference is obvious. After 4 to 6 hours in extreme cold, if there is no backup heat source, the inside of that cab can become dangerous. And there is another problem people rarely think about: moisture. Every breath from the driver adds humidity to the air inside the cab. As the temperature falls, that moisture freezes onto the windows. By morning, the driver may wake up cold, stiff, uncomfortable, and surrounded by glass coated in ice from the inside. That means poor visibility, frozen surfaces, and a very bad start to the day. Nobody wants to wake up in what feels like a steel freezer with a steering wheel. So how do truckers avoid that? The answer begins before the driver ever gets under the blanket. It begins with the truck itself. Modern long-haul trucks are not just boxes with engines attached. Sleeper cabs, especially modern ones, are designed with real-world weather in mind. Manufacturers like Volvo, Scania, Kenworth, Peterbilt, and Freightliner spend a lot of engineering time making sure their sleeper cabins can handle harsh climates. Compared to trucks from the 1980s or 1990s, the insulation in modern sleeper cabs is on a completely different level. The sleeper walls, ceiling, and floor use thermal insulation layers that slow down heat loss. Modern double-glazed windows also help retain warmth much better than old single-pane glass. This is not luxury for the sake of luxury. In serious winter conditions, insulation is part of survival. Scandinavian trucks often take this even further, and that makes perfect sense. Companies like Volvo and Scania come from places where cold weather is not theoretical. Their customers actually live and work in it. Door seals are another detail most people ignore, but drivers definitely do not. A weak door seal at minus 30 degrees is not just irritating. It can make the cabin impossible to keep warm. Modern trucks use multi-layer rubber seals that compress tightly when the doors close, reducing drafts and limiting the amount of freezing air that can sneak into the cab. Then there is the layout itself. The sleeper berth, the actual bunk where the driver sleeps, is usually at the back of the cab. That is important. It is farther away from the doors, farther away from the windshield, and surrounded on more sides by insulated walls. In other words, the sleeping area is usually the most protected thermal zone in the truck. That is not a coincidence. That is deliberate design. The driver is sleeping in the part of the vehicle that has the best chance of staying warm.
But here is the problem. Insulation only slows the cold down. It does not defeat it. At -30 degrees, you need heat. And this is where the systems inside the truck become seriously interesting. The first and most obvious heat source is the main diesel engine. A large diesel engine produces an enormous amount of heat while it is running. The cabin heater uses that heat through a coolant-based system, very similar to the heater in a regular car. Hot coolant flows from the engine, passes through a heater core in the cab, and a fan blows air across it. That warm air fills the interior. It is simple, powerful, and effective. A running diesel engine can take a frozen cab and make it warm in just a few minutes. But there is a catch. You cannot run a huge diesel engine all night every night just to stay warm. It burns fuel. A lot of fuel. We are talking roughly 2 to 4 L of diesel per hour just for idling, depending on the truck and the conditions. Do that for one night and it hurts a little. Do it for a week, a month, or a full winter season, and it becomes a massive expense. Then you have emissions, noise, wear on the engine, and regulations that we will talk about later. So the trucking industry needed another answer, a way to keep the driver warm without keeping the main engine alive all night long. And that is where auxiliary systems come in. One of the most common solutions in North America is the auxiliary power unit, usually called an APU. If you have ever walked around a parked semi and noticed a small separate diesel unit mounted near the back of the cab or under the frame, that was probably an APU. Think of it as a small independent engine, much smaller than the truck's main engine, but strong enough to power the systems the driver needs while parked. It can provide heat in winter, air conditioning in summer, electricity for outlets, power for devices, a refrigerator, and other sleeper cab equipment. A typical APU might produce around 5 to 15 kilowatts of power, which is more than enough for life inside the sleeper when the truck is stopped. The big advantage is fuel savings. Instead of burning 3 or 4 liters per hour with the main engine, an APU might use about 1 liter per hour, sometimes even less. Over a full winter, for a driver who spends most of the year on the road, that can mean thousands of dollars saved. That is why fleets and owner-operators are willing to invest in them. The APU is not just a comfort feature. It is an economic tool. But it is not perfect. It is still another mechanical system, another thing to service, another thing to repair, another thing that can fail at the worst possible time. Ideally, it does not fail at -30 degrees in the middle of nowhere. But ask enough long-haul drivers, and you will hear plenty of stories about an APU giving up on the coldest night of the year. It is almost part of the job at this point. Then there is another solution, one that is especially common in Europe and very popular in Scandinavian trucking: the diesel parking heater. In my opinion, this is one of the cleanest, smartest pieces of cold weather engineering in the trucking world. The two names drivers talk about most are Webasto and Espar. Espar is sometimes connected with Eberspecher, which is the full company name, but most people simply say Espar. These heaters are compact, efficient, and surprisingly powerful. They are built to do one job: keep the cab warm without running the main engine. Here's how it works. A diesel parking heater is a small self-contained combustion unit, often about the size of a shoebox. It is installed under the cab, inside a sleeper compartment, or somewhere else in the truck. It draws a small amount of diesel from the truck's main fuel tank, burns it in a controlled chamber, and uses that heat either to warm coolant or to blow warm air directly into the cabin. The exact system depends on the type, but the idea is the same. Small fuel use, big warmth, and the numbers are impressive. A Webasto or Espar heater running through a freezing night might use only 0.2 to 0.5 liters of diesel per hour. Compare that to 2 to 4 L per hour from the main engine, and it becomes obvious why drivers love them. They are quiet, they are efficient, they do not need a whole engine running. All they need is a little fuel and a small amount of electrical power from the truck batteries. In Scandinavia, where winter temperatures regularly fall far below -20 degrees Celsius, these heaters are not treated as a bonus. They are standard equipment. Volvo and Scania trucks built for northern European markets are often fitted with these systems at the factory. Because the alternative is simple, drivers idling their main engines all night. And that is expensive, wasteful, and in many places illegal. But equipment is only half the story. The other half is the driver. Because surviving extreme cold in a truck is not just about what is installed under the cab, it is about routines. It is about experience. It is about knowing what can go wrong before it actually goes wrong. Start with bedding. A serious cold weather driver does not throw one thin blanket onto the bunk and hope for the best. That is how rookie mistakes happen. Experienced drivers use proper sleeping gear. High-quality sleeping bags rated for low temperatures, thermal blankets, and layered bedding systems. Some drivers use sleeping bags rated to night as 20 degrees Cs or even as 30 degrees Cs as their main bedding. That way, if the heater struggles or partially fails during the night, the driver still has a real safety buffer. Clothing matters as well. Nobody experienced is sleeping in light summer pajamas in northern Canada in January. Thermal base layers, warm socks, and sometimes a light hat are completely normal. It sounds obvious, but plenty of new drivers learn that lesson the hard way during their first real winter on the road. Another common habit is pre-warming the cab. Before shutting down for the night, experienced drivers often run the engine heater long enough to make the cab genuinely warm. Not just comfortable. Warm enough that the walls, bunk area, and interior surfaces have stored some heat. Then, when the parking heater or APU takes over, it is maintaining warmth, not trying to rescue a cabin that has already dropped close to freezing. That makes a huge difference. Drivers also prepare the truck itself. Fuel level matters. A diesel parking heater draws from the main fuel tank, so parking for the night with low fuel in extreme cold is asking for trouble. Then there is diesel gelling. This surprises a lot of people, but diesel fuel can thicken and gel in very cold conditions, especially below around 15 degrees Celsius for standard diesel. That is why cold weather drivers use winter blend diesel or anti-gel additives during winter months. If the fuel gels, the heater can stop working. And if the heater stops working at -30 degrees, suddenly the night becomes very serious. That brings us to the danger side. Because getting this wrong is not just uncomfortable, it can be fatal. The first danger is hypothermia. If the main heat source fails and the driver has no backup heater, no proper bedding, and no plan to get somewhere warm, the temperature inside the cab can drop to unsafe levels within hours. Hypothermia does not always need the kind of cold people imagine. If someone is wet, exhausted, or dressed badly, it can begin at surprisingly moderate temperatures. In a metal truck cab with -30 degrees outside, the risk is not theoretical, it is real. But there is another danger, and it is one people often forget: carbon monoxide poisoning. If a driver chooses to idle the main engine all night for heat, especially in poor ventilation, carbon monoxide can become a threat. This is especially dangerous if the truck is parked in an enclosed area or if snowdrifts block the exhaust. Carbon monoxide has no color, it has no smell, and it can act quickly. That is why many experienced drivers keep a carbon monoxide detector in the cab. It is one of those small pieces of equipment that seems unnecessary until the exact moment it becomes the most important thing you own. Then there is the mechanical side of the cold. Diesel engines do not love extreme winter. Batteries lose a significant amount of capacity in low temperatures. That means starting the truck after a freezing night can become genuinely difficult. Many drivers in cold regions use battery blankets, block heaters, or other systems to keep the engine block and battery warm overnight. Because the nightmare scenario is simple. You wake up at 9 or 30 degrees in a remote location and the truck will not start. That is not just inconvenient, that can become an emergency. Now let us talk about idling regulations. This surprises a lot of people outside trucking. In many parts of North America, leaving a truck engine idling all night just to stay warm is actually illegal. Many American states and Canadian provinces have anti-idling laws that limit how long a stationary truck can keep its engine running. In some places, the limit can be as little as 3 to 5 minutes. These rules exist mainly because of emissions and noise pollution. But they also changed the industry. They pushed fleets and drivers toward auxiliary power units, diesel parking heaters, and smarter overnight heating systems. In Europe, the rules vary by country, but the pressure is similar. Lower emissions are a major priority, and unnecessary idling is increasingly discouraged or restricted, especially around cities, rest areas, and truck stops. The interesting thing is that these regulations, frustrating as they can be, actually help push better technology forward. The widespread use of parking heaters and APUs is not just about comfort. It is also a response to law, fuel prices, emissions, and the reality of modern trucking. Sometimes regulation forces innovation, and trucking is full of examples like that. So what does the future look like? This becomes especially interesting as the industry slowly moves toward electric trucks. And yes, slowly is the right word. Electric trucks create a new cold weather challenge. Instead of diesel fuel, they rely on battery packs, and battery packs lose capacity in extreme cold. That is a known limitation of current battery technology. Heating a truck cab overnight at -30 degrees, using only the onboard batteries, would consume a meaningful part of the truck's range. And range is already one of the biggest concerns with electric long-haul trucks. Manufacturers are working on solutions: better heat pump systems, improved battery thermal management, more efficient cabin heating, and smarter energy use. But for extreme cold climate long-haul work, electric trucks still face serious challenges that have not been fully solved. That is why diesel parking heaters may remain relevant for a long time, even as main powertrains become electric. They are simply too efficient, too compact, and too effective to disappear quickly. So when you put all of this together, the reason truck drivers can sleep in -30 degrees is not one magic trick. It is a complete system. Thermally insulated sleeper cabs, diesel parking heaters, auxiliary power units, smart cold weather routines, proper bedding, good clothing, fuel preparation, backup planning, and years of hard-earned driver experience. That is what keeps a truck cab livable when the world outside is frozen solid. And that is what makes trucking so interesting. Because from the outside it looks simple. A truck parks, a driver sleeps, the night passes. But when you look closer, there is engineering, regulation, survival knowledge, and years of real-world experience hidden behind that one simple image. The trucking industry is full of stories like this. Problems most people never think about, solutions built out of necessity, and details that only make sense once you understand what life on the road is really like. And that is exactly what we are here to uncover. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Trucks United for more stories from the world of trucking. And if you have ever driven in extreme cold, whether you are a professional driver or someone with a winter road story, leave it in the comments below. I would genuinely love to hear it. Thanks for watching.